One of the most requested things I get on YouTube in the comments is, when are you going to do a shed tour? So maybe I'll do one of those now. Let's do it. Before we do the shed tour, a little bit of background. Didn't always have this shed. I started out no shed, of course, like most people do, and very little tools, and things take a long time to accumulate, take years, bit by bit. So as the need arises, you go out and buy a tool, or a job comes up and you might need something to make it a bit easier, so you got to justify it. But I've been at the same place, the same house where I live. This is my shed in my backyard, and we moved here in 2000, December 2000. So in March 2002 I finished building the shed. So the shed dimensions are 8 meters long by 4 meters wide by 3,300 to the very peak of the shed roof up there. And it is a shed of my own design. I made it. It's a steel portal frame shed, and when I first started in here there was very little really inside the shed, and it's taken a few years to get it to what it is today. So let's have a look around. Shed power. It's 240 volts here in Australia, and I have a 15 amp outlet for the CNC and for the welder, any other those heavy machines, and then I have distribution going out to power points throughout the shed. Might be a bit hard to see now, but one of the first things you see when you come into the shed is this overhead truss frame. I made a video on this a few years ago. Now I hang my power, hang air, I hang bits off it to paint. The 4 lights. On this side, the left hand side, is 2 fluoros. On the right hand side are LEDs. The LEDs are much better. So on the right hand side of the shed as you come in is my art wall. I guess an art wall in a work shed is not extremely practical, but it is in terms of providing you with inspiration and a reason to do better. Things that inspire me I put on the wall here. I've got my stickers from people that send me stickers on the bandsaw and on the wall behind there. In 2017 I was extremely fortunate to have a trip to the United States. We went to New York City and I caught up with Tim Sway. As a gift he gave me this from the Ernestina. He carved this out, the Forme Industrious sign there, and he gave that to me amongst other bits of wood and bits of pieces. It's a wonderful thing. That's from the Ernestina ship. It's incredible. In the same trip I caught up with Mr. Jimmy DeResta. He gave me these 2 signs here which I brought back to Australia and framed, and also the DeResta pick. And you really couldn't hope to meet 2 nicer guys than Mr. Tim Sway and Jimmy DeResta. That was a wonderful memory that I have. On the left hand side of the shed as you walk in, more piles of crap, consumables and some tool shelving. It's my welding bench. Everything in my shed goes on wheels so I can move it around. It's a small space and I do woodwork, metalwork. There's nothing dedicated, so everything has to be versatile and there's a compromise with everything. So on all, not all, but most things I have in my shed have caster wheels to help them move around. When I was a young boy, maybe 8 or 9, my father made me this surfboard. And unfortunately there's no surf in Townsville and where I live, and it sat at the back of my grandparents' place for a number of years, and it deteriorated out in the rain. That's unfortunate, but the main thing is that that's something my father made for me. It's out of marine plywood back in 1978. In a future video I'm going to do up this engine tackle block. It's a really big heavy tackle block and it used to belong to my grandfather. Unfortunately my grandfather passed away back in 1974. I was only about 3-4 years old at the time. He was a motor mechanic for his whole life. This used to be his, and it'd be an honour to be able to restore this back to its glory. It is extremely heavy, but it'll be a wonderful job to do. Here's the workbench. It's once again this workbench is on wheels, so I can move it around, and I do all the time. It's 2.4 meters long by 600 millimeters wide. It's got a hardwood top on it. I made this a few years ago. It's got 3 drawers. They're reclaimed, and I put some marker pens and pencils and things in the first drawer. TIG replacement consumables. Second drawer, all my files through here. Third drawer is nothing to see in the third drawer actually. And now it has this extension which I just made yesterday. to help me cut big sheets of plywood. So underneath the bench I keep all my dust and crap, steel, little bits and pieces of offcuts under there. So I have several areas where I store my bits and pieces in the shed. Glamorous areas and some not so glamorous areas. What you see in the videos is more the glamorous areas. I do have a shipping container which I keep outside the shed here, which has my bits and pieces in there. I'll take you for a 3-second tour of that, and let's have a look at some of the glamorous areas. The big orange cabinet here is where I keep the bulk of my hand tools, little spanners and screwdrivers and other bits and pieces. We'll have a look through that. And I do of course have this tool wall here with my screwdrivers and hammers and spanners, some drill bits, chisels, saws, other little bits and pieces along here, sprays, and a shelf. You've got to have a shelf that hides all your crap up there as well. On this side here is where I keep my lathing tools and some other miscellaneous bits and pieces in there. This one here is with my cabinet. The way I've got it sorted out is screws, bolts, washers and nails and miscellaneous stuff, which I'll have an index card on the side, and then I've got drawers for PPE. These ones here electrical, these ones here are tapes and sanding, all the sanding stuff, abrasives, and the bottoms is glues and paintbrushes and stuff like that. So there is a system, it's not that hard. Little screws from the left to the big screws to the right, so to speak. Alright, let's talk tools. Let's start as we walk in the shed. This is my compressor, 12 cubic feet per minute flow rate. It's a triple pump and it runs off 10 amps. Here's my welder. It's a Welding Industries Australia Weldmatic 200i. It uses 15 amp power on 240 volts. It's been a fantastic welder, very reliable. I've had WIA welders for probably 19 years and they've been brilliant. And it's set up for welding mild steel pretty much. I'm running 0.8mm solid wire in my welder. It's doing good. I do have a TIG welder plasma cutter combination. That's this guy here. And so it does TIG, does stick welding and does plasma. None of which it does exceptionally well, but adequately. For a small workshop, something like this is cheap and gets you out of trouble. Here's my dust extraction unit, and it is invaluable. If I didn't have it, I'd have dust absolutely everywhere. And when you're welding or grinding, when you're doing woodwork, it's very dangerous. You can have fires. So I try and clean up my workshop as best I can before I do any of that. Get rid of all the dust, blow it out, etc. So I set this up on my table saw, and I set it up on the CNC machine, and then I use it to vacuum and clean up the shop. Here's a CNC machine. I've had it for probably about a year and a half. It's a 3D Tech heavy mill. It's the larger one. I think it's a 1.5. It uses a 1.5 kilowatt spindle. It uses the CNC controller from Bandsaw. It's this guy down here. So that eliminates using or having the need to have a computer attached to it. And the Bandsaw has solved a lot of the problems that I had with the CNC, in that it's completely reliable. The setup I had before gave me nothing but trouble, but now I'm starting to learn how to use the CNC confidently, and it's starting to produce an income for me. My lathe I got a couple of years ago now. It's a second-hand machine. I bought this off a guy who bought it brand new and he never used it. He put it in his shed, had plans to use it, but never got around to it. So by the time I got it, it was a bit rusted up, but in new condition. It doesn't have manual gear changing, and that's okay. It's probably a good starter lathe. It's not that big. It's not that powerful, but I find it a very nice tool to have in a small workshop, and I'm very grateful to have a machine like this in my workshops. My bench grinder cum linisher, or belt sander, is something that I use all the time in my projects for taking material away from either wood or steel. There's also got a buffing pad on there. So this is only a small 6-inch grinder. I made all the side attachment parts, and it's working very well. It's a hard working machine, gets a flogging. This is called a multi-tool. You can buy it and it just attaches to your standard grinder. And I believe it's an Australian made product, but I believe they're selling these all around the world now. Here's my drill press, a Hitachi. I think they've changed their name. I think it's a 13mm chuck on there. It's probably just your sort of standard drill press. It's the high pedestal type. So here's a watering can. I made that in high school, probably 1986. We won't talk about that. So on my bandsaw I'm running this, I think it's a 16mm deep this way, but it's a 6 TPI. It's a bimetal blade, so I can cut through metal and wood, so steel and wood. I rarely do I might cut through some nails on some pallet wood or something like that. Now I had a lot of trouble setting up blades, and the standard blades that came with it. I use a 6mm and a 12mm blade for ripping. They were terrible, and it wasn't until I got quality bandsaw blades that I could actually rip straight. So just something that I learned from using the bandsaw. I was doing all sorts of compensation with this thing here, making it go one way or another to compensate for the drift in the cut, that bandsaw drift. Really, with the good blade set on it, everything's set up so everything's neutral, that drift just disappeared. Half-code PT6, 150mm. Oh, I've got hiccups. Gosh, this guy's appeared in so many of my videos. It's a real workhorse. It's a BS5S half-code machine again. Once again, commonly available throughout the world. It's a swivel model. So it does have the swivel ability through here. I can do 45s without moving material. The reason why I like it, it cuts vertically. You can set it up like this, or obviously it can cut horizontally. Very simple change, and so the versatility is great. For a small workshop, it's a brilliant tool to have. It's on caster wheels. It has pulleys to adjust the speed, and again, really important that you get a good quality blade. I've gone through, when I first got this, I just bought the cheap standard blades. Now I'm using these excision blades. I get no kickbacks from any of these companies, by the way. These good quality excision blades, they just last for, I replaced one after a year of use, and that's really good. Whereas I replaced one of those cheaper brands, starting with S, probably every job I would replace it. You can set this up for water cooling or lubrication. Maybe I'll do that in the future, but this is a fantastic tool if you're looking to getting into metalwork and doing a bit of welding. Cutting your materials, one of the tasks that you have to do. Using a tool like this gives you a lot of versatility in your workshop. Highly recommend it. Just to get it level, because my shed floor is all wonky. My little contractor saw here, it's a DeWalt DWE 7491 XE. I would love a nice big saw stop, but once again, this is a small workshop here. This is a contractor saw. I made the work stand for it so it can be wheeled around. It's the same height as my worktop here, so timber just comes straight across onto here and supports it as an outfeed table. It's a very good saw in terms of its versatility. This one here is a great compromise. It seems to do everything I need it to do. Bear in mind, I'm not a true dedicated woodworker. I'm a maker and I do a little bit of everything. So a bit of woodwork, a bit of metalwork, a bit of painting. I can do a little bit of everything. So a saw like this is perfect for me. Very rarely do I use the sliding compound miter saw out there, the miter saw. I use this. This seems to do just about everything I need. I have got another one identical to this, except for it does the miter, does the 45-degree cuts. So I'm just a hack. I do have a shop rat as well. I need to set a trap. Any advice? I have two grinders here. Just the 100mm grinders. These ones here, not the 125mm. Very good, very dependable. Workhorses of the workshop when you're doing metal work. They're fantastic. I always use the grinder with the handle on the side. These things have got a lot of torque, a lot of power. They spin very fast. You want to be able to maintain control of these things here, so I always use the handle on the side. I do have two fire extinguishers. One just here below my power, and another one I put outside when I'm welding. I do need to get the bigger version fire extinguisher. That's what I've got at the moment, so two fire extinguishers. Let's have a look what we've got here. So I have these bunch of chisels. There's three main ones which I got as a kit, I think for a birthday present when I was probably about 19 or maybe 20, and I've used them and abused them chronically. I should be reported. Top quality, this is a Narax 32mm chisel. It's nice and sharp. I intend to look after this one and keep it sharp. Speaking of keeping things sharp, how I do it, I've learnt a lot. I've just got this ordinary wood stone, oil stone, that I've had that for probably maybe 30 years as well. An oil stone, I use that. I've just recently bought this 3000, 8000 grit soapstone or water stone, which I haven't used yet, but I'll be using that. And also I've got the Veritas, this Veritas angle. It just maintains the angle. And it helps you put your micro bevel on it. It's a fantastic tool, and occasionally I use that. Okay, these wood planes here, most of these I got from my father-in-law in various states of repair, and all I've done really is just fix a few up, adjust the blades, sharpen them, and use them and abuse them. I need to look after them a bit better. Maybe I'll do a restoration on them. One's a Pope, and I think this is an Australian-made one. It's quite a big guy. This one here, maybe a jointing plane. This one here is a made in the USA. I can't quite see the name on it. It's very thin-sided. It's got a lot of patina on it. And I don't use this one very often. It needs to be fixed. And this one here is a little Bailey number 4.5 Bailey. It's got Stanley on the frog. It's a good little block plane. And this little guy here had a mishap with a power saw. My Triton Work Center was sitting underneath and it got chopped, but it's largely my go-to plane. Remember, I'm not a proper woodworker. I'm a bit of a hack, so a tool like this is perfect for me. Just got to keep it sharp and remove material that you need. This is a little wood plane for making my shoe polish kit cases. It's one that I made as a YouTube video on this guy here as well, and it works really well actually. I made the blade out of an old saw. It seems to do the trick very, very nicely. There's my chisels and there's my wood planes. At the back of the shed I've got my little fridge. It's hot here in North Queensland, where I keep only water in here. Just water only, and maybe some other minor refreshments for a Friday afternoon. Plunger out of medium use. Circular saw, occasionally. Sander, all the time. Biscuit joiner, medium use, good tool. Handheld planer, rare. Jigsaw, rare. And demolition saw, rare. Mobile phone, chuck it in the bin. vices, I really only have 2, 4-inch, maybe 6, I don't know. I have the super jaws as well. The good thing about the super jaws, you can use your foot. Another second-hand tool is this Triton miter saw, sliding compound miter saw. I've just put a brand new Diablo blade on it. Once again, bought second-hand. When I worked in aviation, you had your own toolkits. There's a bunch of junk in here these days, old drill bits and miscellaneous files and stuff, bike tube repair kits. So every workshop's got a junk area, and this is just one of mine. Okay, clamps. We all need clamps, and this is my collection of clamps. And I also have some spring clamps as well. I keep them up there out of the way. Some of these clamps I've made myself. Let's have a look at those. Oh, hang on, I do have a press down there. It's only a small 6-ton press. I have a metal ring roller, only for very, very light stuff. Not very useful for anything heavy. If you have a small workshop and you don't have a lot of tools, but you've got a circular saw, using one of these track guides, very simple to make. I found it invaluable just recently when cross-cutting a big sheet of plywood. This is 1.2 meters. This will cut across a sheet of plywood. Very simple to make. I think I made mine out of 18mm ply, but it just clamps to your job, and you've got a track saw. Now I have a bunch of drills, a bunch of hole saws and things like that, standard drill bits like these ones here, standard drill bits. This guy here, rotor cut from Hewen. They go through steel like butter. Put a bit of lubricant on them, you change the cutter, they come in different sizes. Rotor cut, look them up. Another hole saw kit, a bit more probably plumber orientated. These things go cut like this a little bit, but they will give you a hole. Here's my Forstner bits. I got these at a garage sale again, and I was lucky enough to get this as a complete kit minus one drill. They're good. They cut holes in wood. I don't think I'm looking to buy too many more tools. Oh, who am I kidding? There's always something that you can always spend money on more tools, but it's not always about that. When I first started out in the making, I was a young age, and I really only had a miter box, a handsaw, some chisels, a hammer, tape measure, squares, and I went out and started building things like cabinets. Fitted out a house that we bought, built all the vanities, and did a heap of tiling work and things like that with some basic tools. So it's not always the amount of tools that you have, it's your desire to do something. It might take you a bit of elbow grease, it might take you some extra time, but there's a lot of tools out there second hand that people are selling fairly cheap. Not having the tools, or people saying you've got all the tools you can make, it's not really acceptable. You've got to have the desire. If you don't have the desire, you won't be able to do anything. So thank you everybody for taking the time to put up with me during this shed tour. It's my first shed tour. I hope you got something out of it. And remember, a bad day in the shed is better than a good day in the office any day. See you next time.